Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And thank you again for joining me here at the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Adelberg, and this is episode 6. That big, awesome voice you just heard right there, that is Mitch Phillips. Check him out at mpvoice.com. Great friend of the show, makes this whole thing look even better than it really is. I spent this past weekend on the golf course, both Saturday and Sunday. Didn't hit one shot, but I probably had just as much fun as if I was actually playing. I spent this weekend caddying for a friend's niece at the Hurricane Junior Golf Tour event here in South Florida. Now, there's plenty of great Grow the Game initiatives out there. There's the First Tee, there's the PGA Junior Golf League. They're all great, but if you really want to help these kids out, go volunteer at a local junior golf event. Perhaps you can caddy or drive around and be a volunteer marshal. At the very least, you'll see some incredible golf. My player, Audrey Yim, had a 9-shot improvement from her first round to her second. She closed with 8 consecutive pars. Do you remember the last time you made 8 consecutive pars? Well, I don't. I think the only thing that made her happier than the score that she shot was when her sister gave her Reese's Peanut Butter Cups on the 14th hole on the last round. So, hey, there's junior golf for you. So for everyone listening, if there's a junior golf program in your area, volunteer your time and let's help grow the game for the kids. Since many junior golfers will eventually compete at the high school level and then attempt to play collegiately, seems like the perfect time to introduce this week's guest. But before we do, let's get some podcast business out of the way. As you know, we are in Apple Podcast. You can subscribe there. You can also find us on Stitcher, Overcast, and Google Play. Remember, we have a new episode each and every week, and it's going to be like that all year long. Also, we are on Instagram, so when you're out hitting balls or practicing or playing, tag us and let us know what you're up to. Finally, you can reach me via email at ben@thebackoftherange.com, always open to suggestions that'll make the podcast even better. So, this week's guest is Ryan Jamison. He is the assistant coach of the men's team at Stanford University. Along with head coach Conrad Ray, Ryan will help lead the Cardinal as they look to add to their program's impressive history of 8 national championships and 10 conference championships. Ryan played collegiately at DePaul University and has had immediate success as a golf coach. In fact, before joining the program at Stanford, he won a national championship with the Division II powerhouse Nova Southeastern University in 2015 and was also named the Division II Coach of the Year. I was able to catch up with Ryan right before New Year's when he was down in South Florida on a recruiting visit. We talked about his transition from Nova Southeastern to Stanford, what it's like to coach the former #1 ranked amateur in the world, that would be Maverick McNeely. And yes, he was also able to share a couple stories about some pretty well-known Stanford golf alums that I'm sure everyone has heard of. So Ryan, thanks for joining me here at the Back of the Range. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, man. I'm glad we make this work out. Glad we could find some time. You're in South Florida right now. I believe you're doing some recruiting. What brings you into town away from California?
Well, obviously, being down here in South Florida this time of year, there's some great. It's kind of a hotbed for junior golf this time of year, and just being able to come down here and spend a few days and recruit some of the top talent in the South Florida area. It's been great. We're working on our classes coming up here in the 2019-2020 classes. So good basically to get down here and get a jump start on the 2019-20 class. Okay, so are you just like visiting kids, or are you here for like some sort of an event? What actually brings you? Explain to me what exactly you're doing on a recruiting trip. How that normally works? In this instance, we actually have, it's kind of ironic. There's 3 different events that are going on at the same time, basically all within 30 miles. So you have the South Beach International Amateur, you have the Doral Publix, and then you have the Dixie Am too as well. I'm not going to be recruiting at the Dixie, but the South Beach and the Doral, I'll spend a few days at being down here and just trying to really narrow down those 2019 classes. And the cool thing about these events, where in the past the South Beach has really only been around for 6 years, and the Miami Doral has been around for a little bit longer. But the cool thing about it is all these international schools from, international teams like Sweden and some other international teams, they'll come down to South Florida this time of year. And it's just a great way for coaches to see a lot of young talent and kind of evaluate them and see if they are potential fits on their golf teams.
Now, obviously, you have to do your due diligence. So not only do you have to look at these kids on the golf course during the day, but to be on the safe side, you probably have to hit some of the clubs in South Beach just to make sure these kids aren't there. Now, it's not for you. This is not about you, but you want to go into these clubs and make sure there's no kids there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I've hit up a good 35 so far this week, so I'm trying to make sure that they're not in there. But I think a lot of these kids, I think they're doing really well with, committing to the golf, and they understand that this is a big week for them and their futures. And I think that a lot of these kids are going to do what they need to do to get done and, have a little fun along the way, probably hit at the beach, maybe grab a couple waves. But all in all, they're there to play golf. And, I think the kids these days are definitely in tune with that.
Sure. So let's kind of dial it back to the beginning of how you got into the game of golf. You were definitely a outstanding player at DePaul University. Before you got to DePaul, tell me how you got into the game of golf.
I would say I started right around the age of 9 or 10. I remember visiting my dad in the summers in North Carolina, and my dad and my grandfather would actually go to the golf course and then come back like 4 or 5 hours later, and I was just bored out of my mind, and I just wondered what they basically did during this time. So I would kind of needle my dad and try to say, hey, you got to take me, you're not hanging out with me, this is not fair, like come all this way.
Guilt trip.
Yeah, total guilt trip. And finally I got him to take me to this golf course in Charlotte, and I had a blast with it. I can't say how good I was, but I definitely remember my grandfather and my dad thinking, hey, this kid actually is pretty decent for just, picking up the golf clubs and going. So, after that, I kind of just fell in love with the game. And I think more than anything, it was a way for me to get a little bit closer with my dad. And, that was pretty exciting for me to be able to hang out with my dad and my grandpa, because there was always two guys that I kind of looked up to and tried to emulate, and, to hang out with them in Charlotte in the summers and to have, no school or anything like that kind of to do at the time. I was definitely bored. So to play golf, it was a pretty fun experience.
Awesome. Well, that's a great way to get into the game, especially connecting with your father and your grandfather. When did it really kind of turn for you more so, not just, a kind of an activity with your father? When did it kind of transition into, wow, I'm starting to get pretty good at this. I may want to take this a little bit more seriously?
I think a big thing, honestly, for me was the summers. My dad actually moved to Chicago probably 3 or 4 years later, and he lived downtown Chicago, and it's not there anymore, but they had what was called this family golf centers, and they had basically this 9-hole par 3 designed by Pete Dye, I believe, and the 9th hole was an island green, and there was a 330-yard range. It was front and back. It was a great practice facility. And my dad, I would go visit my dad in the summers. So he belonged to this golf course. And, I would literally just hang out there every day. Like, he would go work. He would obviously join me after work. But, like, I would go there during the day. And I even worked there because I just really, really enjoyed kind of hanging out there. And I think, spending a couple summers there and started to compete in some Illinois Junior Golf Association events at the time, and then competing in some stuff where my dad competed as a kid, because he grew up in Northwest Indiana, and there was some junior events that he would play as a kid. So he's like, hey, why don't you go try to play in this? I won this back when you were, before you were born. You should try and play in this and see if you can win this. And I remember winning a couple of those events, and that was probably the case when I realized, hey, I might be pretty good at this. And that's kind of what led me to try out, obviously, for the high school golf team. And and I was a second string quarterback for the football team in middle school, and I dropped back a couple times and it didn't work out too well, so I just decided that football probably wasn't the best route for me, being 5'11" and can't throw the ball more than 40 yards.
It's interesting, because a lot of our previous guests on the podcast, it's a common theme. I played football, realized I was probably too small to continue that much further. Let me kind of focus on my golf.
Yeah. And I think it's a very humbling experience when you're you're playing football with guys that are just far more athletic than you are. And
yeah, you know pretty quick, don't you? I mean, there's that time where you're just like, okay, I'm not. Yeah, they're bigger than me, and I'm just not going to be able to compete with this.
Yeah, and I was a very naive kid too, because I thought I was like just super athletic, like Mr. All Sports, and I could play anything. And then, I think after riding the bench for 4 or 5 games, I kind of realized that maybe like my intent on how good I was probably not exactly up to speed. So I just kind of tried to pull a 180.
Well, there you go. But you found your calling, found your athletic outlet in golf, and played well in high school, and found yourself at DePaul, which, I mean, D1 school. Tell me a little bit about your experience playing for them and what you picked up playing college golf.
More than anything, I think I learned, really grew up during that experience. I mean, there's a lot of things that, you get introduced to in college with beer. There's more access to beer and all that stuff that kind of goes on with college life, and trying to be disciplined about those things. And I would definitely say that I was probably I was pretty disciplined during my time there. I really, really enjoyed being at DePaul. It was a top 25 business school, so that was very interesting to me because I wanted to get my business degree. My father got his business degree too as well, so I wanted to kind of follow in his footsteps. And then also, Betty Kaufman, who was she just retired basically this last year. She was a amazing mentor for me, and she gave me a chance. And I knew every year that I was going to compete in the Conference USA, and we had schools like TCU and Houston and UAB with the Graham McDowell at the time. So a lot of great college players that were playing at these programs. And, I hadn't done as much as these guys have done in high school. So, it was my way to kind of get into that, get into those fields and mix it up with those guys and kind of see if I could hang.
Sure. So you mentioned mixing it up with some guys at the other schools in your conference. Give me one guy that you just saw that obviously has moved on to higher ranks, that when you saw them in college, you're like, yep, that guy's going to be moving on further than this.
Yeah, no, I think at the time for sure it would have been Graham McDowell at UAB. I remember playing I was a freshman playing in the conference championship. It was somewhere in Pensacola, Florida. And I think after that year, he actually turned pro. And I think he won within the first couple of years too, as well as a PGA Tour player. But I just remember seeing him on the range with he had a white T-shirt on, I think, and didn't have on, a traditional polo or anything like that. And I just remember looking at him and thinking, man, this guy's got some swag. He'll probably make it. So, he's had a pretty good career so far, and it was kind of cool to be able to mix it up in some tournaments with him and compete against him. And he definitely got the best of me every time he played.
Well, I'm sure he did that to a lot of players. So you were the team captain at DePaul. You picked up a win at the Midwest Amateur. So you had a solid 4-year career with DePaul. Did that immediately move you into coaching, or give me a little bit about the timeline of how you started getting that into your head about, hey, I might want to be a coach?
Well, first of all, I knew that I wasn't going to play professional golf. I knew I didn't have that level. My whole thing was, I think you have to be able to win at every level. I won at the high school level, but I didn't really compete or win at the college level enough to where really feel like I can warrant, myself basically turning professional. So, from there, basically what I said is, I don't really know what I want to do now, but, I had an opportunity to basically tour. This is a kind of funny story. I actually had an opportunity to tour the country for a company called Marketing Works, which is kind of down the line of my major in marketing business. And so I took that opportunity. So I basically hopped in a Hummer and traveled to different sporting events and concerts across the country, and spend 6 months doing that and kind of just really figuring out, what I really, really wanted to do.
Kind of like the American equivalent of backpacking through Europe, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was kind of a 6-month way to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, but also at the same time get paid for it. That 6 months out there was really great for me because it made me realize that, hey, I really enjoyed, kind of my time playing college golf. And I remember actually where I was when I had my first, my first response. I sent some stuff over to Nova Southeastern for the assistant coaching position that was basically opening up. And I got an email back, And I remember I was in Furman, South Carolina. They had a web.com tour event that was the BMW Pro-Am that we were probably doing some mobile marketing at.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Kevin Marsh, and he's like, yeah, why don't you come down and interview for this? And, lo and behold, I went down there probably about a month later, interviewed for the job, and I got the job, and it was the first job I ever applied for. And, that definitely kind of started me off on my path of college coaching. And just thinking about that whole thing is like literally an example of being in the right place at the right time.
Sure. And this is just to clarify for our listeners, so that you were a 4-year, you were an assistant for 4 years underneath Kevin Marsh at Nova Southeastern, a D2 school in Davie, Florida.
Yeah, D2, South Florida, Davie, Florida. And Nova Southeastern just purchased, I guess about a year prior to me arriving, purchased Grand Oaks Golf Club, which was actually the golf course that was used for filming in the Caddy Shack. So to me, looking at a place to coach and all these things kind of in front of me, it seemed pretty cool. And, it just really worked out just to be down in South Florida. I wanted to be green, be on green grass year round. That was something that was pretty major for me. And then the fact that my grandfather lived 30 miles north in Boca was just kind of a home run.
Oh, perfect.
'Cause I've always been pretty close to family and having somebody close, where I can go on the weekends and hang out and things like that was definitely a big plus for me.
Well, I'd imagine being family oriented helps you relate better to your players, not just at Nova, but, on up the ladder as you've gone to Stanford. So it seems like that's a pretty common theme with people that I've spoken to in your profession, big time family first kind of people. And that bleeds over into looking after your players and getting their respect and developing a bond.
Yeah. I mean, I think coaching, a big part of coaching is relationships. And if you have relationships, quality relationships with your players, I think that they're going to go to bat for you. They're going to play hard for you. They're going to listen to you. They're going to respect you. They're going to do the things that, you tell them to do most of the time. And and they're going to, and if not, they're going to talk to you like men, and they're going to work it out, and you're going to find something that kind of works out for everyone. And that's probably in most cases the right way to go. And, I've always been big on relationships. I've always been big on listening, asking a lot of questions. I think that's very important. I think the players today are just different. You have to spend more time kind of asking questions to find out kind of what it's like for them kind of living, and really coming up in a different era. I think back to kind of my coaching, like early on in my life, and it was very, it was very in your face. It was very like controlling. It was kind of that style of coaching. And I think today's players just don't respond as much to that overall. And, so I would definitely consider myself more of a player's coach, and that doesn't mean I'm a pushover or,
Sure.
Walk over or anything like that. But I'm definitely trying to find out what kind of makes each guy tick and find out, how to coach each guy. And most of the time it's different. I think each player, comes from a different background. And you have to find ways to kind of get the best out of them. And, I think that's worked pretty well for me, throughout the years. And, I definitely think that's the way to go with today's kid.
Sure. No, I could not have said that better. I totally agree with you. These kids have just a different, socially they're different. Emotionally, they're different. They have a lot of different responsibilities, and it seems like they're always engaged in a lot of different activities. So you have to be able to relate to them on their level. You've done more than just coaching. So before we get into a little bit about the national championships at Nova and your relatively new position as an assistant at Stanford, you've had some other positions around golf. Most notably, you worked in some tournament ops for the Michael Jordan Celebrity Invitational and Nota Begae's tournament for his foundation. How did that happen? And I'm sure you're going to have a couple stories about those experiences.
Yeah, no, I think basically how it happened was from Kevin Marsh. So he was my boss at Nova Southeastern. He was the head coach there. And after I moved on from Nova Southeastern, he had this opportunity to go work for this company called JPSC. And JPSC basically helped put on these golf tournaments, put on the Michael Jordan Celebrity Invitational, put on the Nota Begae Foundation Challenge. And Kevin was, I was lucky enough for Kevin to bring me on at these tournaments. And, totally cool experiences. I remember, we had a lot of fun at these tournaments. Don't get me wrong. And we worked pretty hard too. I can remember some late nights. I can remember, missing a couple bells in the morning. But overall, it was a pretty fun experience, hanging out with celebrity athletes and celebrity actors, and just seeing kind of how they interact was a really, really cool experience for me.
Well, you don't seem very nervous talking to me, so obviously you've learned to deal with it a little bit better.
Yeah. No, I definitely think I've learned to deal with it a little bit better. But you're definitely. I don't really consider you on the par of Michael Jordan.
What?
But
okay.
So,
all right. Well, we'll keep the episode going then. I'll do better. I'll try. So give me a good Jordan story. We've all heard about the, what is it, like a half dozen cigars a day, and he's playing 36.
Yeah.
Give me one just from Jordan, and actually I want one from Nota Begay also.
Yeah, so Jordan, I would say a big thing, and I'm sure a lot of people hear this, but like the way he goes is basically he'll play golf with about 20 people in a group, and they'll all have kind of their own golf cart. And and the joke is with him is like his golf cart always goes faster. Okay. So he'll have the 45-mile-an-hour golf cart that I can't even name the company that's probably made by. And he obviously has
Ferrari. I think it's Ferrari who makes that one.
Yeah, it's probably a Ferrari, because the thing just absolutely moves. But there's always something, that he's gambling on. I mean, I would definitely say that. I think he'd probably tell you that. But yeah, it's just really fun to be around those guys. I remember being at the MJCI and having it looks like they've had some sort of bets with whether or not one of his friends would basically jump in the water at the 18th hole of the MJCI, and you could tell they definitely had some money on it. And before I can even look back, like this guy's jumping in the water on 18 at Shadow Creek, and you can tell he gets out of the water and he just throws up his fingers, like waving like the money sign, like pay me. So that was a pretty cool experience to kind of see how he interacts with his with everyone. I know he really, really enjoys golf, and I think everybody that I've ever talked to, when he plays 36, 54 holes a day. And, he plays about as fast as you can think. And
is he more of needing shots from other players and winning that way? Or is he, I know he's incredibly competitive.
Yeah.
But is he able to kind of go toe to toe and play some really excellent golf and kind of take it low? Or is he kind of at some sort of level and then there's always just some strokes and some
as far as I know, like I think he's always been pretty much a 4 handicap. And I'm sure there's a lot of guys that would tell you that that's, maybe a little bit better or maybe a little bit worse, and he's hot dogging a little bit. So I think he's always played to a 4 handicap. And I think when he's playing a little bit better, he's still playing to that 4 handicap. So he definitely has a little bit of advantage when he's playing a lot of golf.
Gotcha.
Because he's playing to a 4.
So he has game. It's not all about just the juice and the action, the side bets. He's out there. He has game.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know from firsthand experience, but I would say his whole game, at least playing when he's gambling, is he's going to get in your head. He's going to try to figure out ways to beat you. He's just a competitive guy.
Very cool. And working with Nota Begay's foundation, I can't imagine the experience there, just seeing what they do, the incredible work they do there. What lessons did you learn working for Nota Begay?
Well, I think, the whole thing with the Nota Begay Foundation Challenge was basically, to benefit his foundation, which was, helping out people in the Native American community of New Mexico. I think close to his home. These kids that a lot of them struggle with childhood obesity. So, he's very active in the community, and he's given these guys, soccer fields and soccer balls and access to golf and other things that these kids would normally have. And I think it's just a great thing that he's done for these kids. And, the cool thing about the whole tournament is he brings back, I don't think he's doing it anymore, but maybe he'll get back into it. But he would have basically four players from each side, and they would have So you'd have the international squad and you'd have the American squad. And, every other year, if Tiger was healthy, Tiger would come back and he would compete on Noda's squad. And the coolest, kind of experience that I really had was listening to kind of Noda and Tiger, take the stage. I think one of the gala nights, they would kind of tell some old stories, kind of about their experiences and everything. And a lot of times it had to do with some Stanford stuff. And that was pretty cool to kind of, to listen to. I think one of the cool experiences or one of the cool stories that they had was one time when, I guess Tiger Woods hit it over to the other fairway. So he was playing a hole. He hit it right of his intended fairway, and Noda sees him over there pacing it off. And so he's walking from, I guess, the 150 played on the hole that he should have been playing, to basically his ball on the other hole. And so he basically walks from the 150 plate to his ball on the other fairway, and he calculates the yardage. And then he obviously knows what the yardage was from the 150-yard plate in the hole that he should have been in. And Noda's looking at him. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm using the Pythagorean theorem to calculate my yardage to the hole. So I always thought that was kind of cool that's the way kind of Tiger thought. And, it's interesting, and it's probably correct too. It's hard to beat math.
Yeah, that's
but it's
pretty much it.
Pretty obvious thing, but I thought it was a pretty cool story. That
I think that's ninth grade geometry. We might need to double check.
Brush up on that. A little bit,
need. Yeah, let's get Noda a book on that. But I'm pretty sure that's what that is. You mentioned Tiger trying to calculate yardages. You actually were present and firsthand for one of the most famous shots of Tiger Woods' career. What can you tell me about the 03 U.S. Open?
Well, I only worked a couple days there, but it was definitely a really cool experience. So I had never been to a major championship before, so it was really cool and neat to get the opportunity from ESPN. There was a guy, I think his name was Mo Davenport, that had obviously knew my golf coach. So he was looking for a few interns for some help that week, probably mainly just kind of running people around. I think we would run Chris Berman. I think Scott Van Pelt was at ESPN at the time. We would give them rides to like their different meetings, because the compound was basically on the side of, I think, the fifth hole, and the main ESPN set, if you will, was behind the putting green. So we would kind of run these sportcasters back and forth. So that was kind of cool to kind of, if nothing more than be valet service. That was kind of cool to see these guys in action.
Yeah, as a college kid, you're seeing these guys you see on TV. I mean, that's got to be awesome. I mean, were they pretty good to relate to? They take the time to talk to you?
Yeah, definitely. I probably couldn't remember too much of what they actually even said. I just probably was, obviously so enamored with the fact that they were on TV and that they did this for a living and talked about golf for a living. Yeah, I thought that was incredibly cool. But, I remember one other thing is, like, I don't remember how I got it, but I basically got access to one of those black media armbands. Nice. And I wore one of those black media armbands, like, in the ropes. And I remember watching Tiger Woods in the ropes on Saturday of that U.S. Open. And I don't know if, the listeners will recall this, but he hit this shot on a par 5. I believe it was on the back 9. Or no, it wasn't. It was hole 7 at the Olympia Fields 2003 U.S. Open. He hit this shot, this cutting 3-wood around the trees. That was just absolutely incredible. And I was actually inside the ropes for that shot. So that was a pretty cool experience to see, and probably one of the best golf shots I've ever seen. I mean, he cut the ball probably, I guess it wouldn't be cut, it'd be a slice, but he sliced the ball probably a good 60, 70 yards around this tree and put it on the green, which is probably 260 away from the hole, which probably cut, if it cuts 60 and goes 260, I mean, you can do the math. That's a pretty difficult shot to hit. So.
And were you close enough to kind of hear the dissertation and the back and forth between him and Steve Williams?
No, definitely wasn't close enough to hear that, but I'm sure it was basically Steve Williams telling him, hey, you should probably lay up. And then probably realizing, oh, wait, you're Tiger Woods. I'll probably just let you go ahead and hit the shot. And probably a good call on Steve's part.
Awesome. Well, that's a great story. So your career at Nova Southeastern as the full-time coach, you have a national championship in 2015. How do you change the culture? How do you get these kids to believe that they are going to be in that position and to chase down a national championship?
I think it was a lot of it was instilled by Kevin Marsh. Being with Kevin Marsh, all the recruits that kind of come in, you know, they've had wins in tournaments. They've competed with some of the most dominant teams in Division II. As these players got recruited and came in, and half the guys I recruited and half of them I didn't, and they were, you know, from Kevin's era or Garrett's era, they were all super talented. And, you know, all we did every day was work really, really hard. You know, when they go to practice, we would, you know, use TrackMan to calculate yardages, try to get as much out of the technical aspect as we could. And I think every tournament that we showed up at, you know, we expected to win. And I remember winning some tournaments. I really do remember this. I remember winning some tournaments by a few shots and thinking, man, we just did not play well this week. And that was kind of the difference with this group, is that they could play, you know, kind of average golf or maybe even slightly below average. And I'm not saying that is the case every week, but there were definitely some tournaments where I felt that they didn't play up to their standards and they still won. And, you know, we had some rounds like that at the national championship. I don't even know that we had the 1 seed. I think we had the 2 seed. And the funny thing is, when we won the national championship, I think the 2 seed had won every year. So, you know, me being a superstitious guy, I'm like, oh, this is great. You know, 2 seeds won every year. We're the 2 seed. This is our year. So, luckily enough, we got to the final match, and it came down to probably one of the most nerve-wracking shots of my life ever. So basically, to set the stage for you, you know, it was kind of back and forth all day. I think we were down early. We were probably down like maybe 3-1-1, which, you know, down in 3 matches, tied in 1 match, up in 1 match. And a big thing that's kind of swung the matches when the 8th hole, I think one of the guys from Lynn maybe put in the water, and kind of Santiago Gomez's match, he was maybe 2 or 3 down at the time. All of a sudden he ties it up, or maybe goes up 1. And,
just to clarify, not to cut you off, but just to clarify, so this is the finals. It's the exact same format as Division I. It's 5 players against 5 players, match play, and it's either win, loss, or
well, actually, the one difference in Division II and Division I is the fact that we play medal match play at the time. So it was like a 72 beats a 74, and then the only way that the score differential actually matters is if you tie 2.5 to 2.5, and then they come down to strokes. So to set the stage that way, basically on that 8th hole was huge, because now all of a sudden we went from down 2 and 3 to match to tied, or maybe even up 1. I can't remember what it was. And, you know, he goes, actually, I think we won the first 2 points, and we were actually getting beat in our, we won the first 2 points. And I think that 3rd match we lost. So we're down, now we're up 2-1, right? And that 5th match, I think we're getting beat pretty good. I think we're getting beat probably 4 or 5. So it's coming down to this 4th match, which was that Santiago Gomez, Jose Miranda match, which that we were telling that story on 8th hole. That was that match. So that match basically came to the 18th hole, and I think Santiago was 1 up going into the 18th hole, and he bombs a drive down there, hits a great drive down there, and you know, if we tie this match, we lose, because we're going to lose. It's going to be 2.5, and we're going to lose on shots, because those other matches, they had won by more than that. We beat them in the matches that we won. So it's basically coming down to the last hole. Santiago hits a great drive, and so he goes for the green, hits a 2-iron, just absolutely flush, and it's just right off the front part of the green. It's a basic chip. It's probably a 40, maybe a 50-foot chip, just right up the slope, but under the circumstances, probably pretty tough. The other kid hits a driver down the fairway, lays up to like 70 yards. And I'm not joking you. In my head, I'm like, this kid's going to make it. Like, he's got a great wedge game. He's going to make it. He leaves the thing literally an inch from the hole for an eagle. Almost makes it, makes birdie. So now Santiago's off the front of the green, 40, 50 feet from the pin. He's got to get this up and down to win a national championship. If he doesn't get it up and down, we lose, because all of a sudden, if he makes a par, we lose the hole, tie the match, goes to shots, we lose the national championship. So long story short, he hits it to about 2 feet, makes the putt, and the rest is history.
There you go. There you go. Well, that's a great way to win a national championship.
Yeah, it was. It was the most nerve-wracking experience of my life, probably. To have kind of the anxiety about the whole situation and being able to come up on top, it was just a really cool experience.
Awesome. Well, you also picked up the Dave Williams National Coach of the Year Award in 2015, and you just mentioned Santiago Gomez closing it out for you. He won the Division II Jack Nicklaus Player of the Year Award. So just a dream season all around for 2015 for Nova Southeastern. Can you tell me who is the player that you had at Nova Southeastern that got the most out of his talent?
Most out of his talent.
Maybe not the best player, but who really?
Yeah, I would probably say it would probably be Ethan Marcus. He actually transferred and went on to Arizona, but just a very, very consistent kid. Hit a lot of fairways, hit a lot of greens, and the days and weeks that he could putt pretty well, he'd kind of hang around the lead. And to me, he was that one guy that was kind of, that guy that kind of really put us over the top, because, a lot of people think that, if you have the one player, you're going to be a pretty good team. And I agree with that. Like, having that number one guy is a pretty solid advantage. But to me, where you can really make up some shots is having that differential and that fifth and fourth guy.
Gotcha. Awesome. You cap off a great 2015 season at Nova Southeastern, and the opportunity comes for you to move on to Stanford. So this is a huge jump. We're not just talking to D2 to D1. We're talking about Stanford. So how did that come about? And walk me through the process of getting to be the assistant at Stanford for the men's program.
Yeah. So I remember being in the position where I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to become a Power 5 head coach, at the D1 level, and, still trying to figure that out to today. And, there were a couple opportunities that came along at some mid-major schools where, it just wasn't the right fit. And I didn't really want to go anywhere where I felt like, I wouldn't have the resources really where I felt like we needed to be successful. I always felt really blessed to be at Nova and have great resources and, the tools that we basically needed to be successful. And so thinking about, okay, where am I going to go as a head coach that I can further my career and be in a position to be a Power 5 head coach? Basically the assumption that I came to was, it's probably going to be the assistant coaching route at the Division I level. And, if it's a top 5, top 10 program, that's going to be kind of the icing on the cake. So, I kind of waited a few years, basically looking for that opportunity to come up. And then when Stanford came up, I just wanted to do whatever I could to basically get in the picture of getting an interview. And, I've heard great things, obviously, at the time about Conrad Ray, who's my boss. And, I just started making phone calls. And actually, one of the first phone calls I made was a buddy of mine, Dave Pizzino, who's the coach at UConn, who, I believe you've interviewed. And he was one of the guys that was very instrumental in kind of helping me out and putting me in touch with Conrad. And, I was so, I just really wanted to be at Stanford, and I really wanted to work with Conrad. I thought that would give me some great experience, and it has given me some great experience. And to work with players like Maverick McNeely and Brandon Wu and, some of the top amateur players in the world, and to work under Conrad, who just actually went into the Hall of Fame this past coaches convention actually a week ago, has been a great experience for me. And, one that it's going to be really, really hard to leave from if that opportunity does come up. But I definitely think, I'm definitely very grateful for the time I've had thus far at Stanford, and can't wait to continue to kind of keep on kind of helping pushing the envelope and kind of fill in the blanks wherever I can, and hopefully get these kids to the national championship and, have a chance to, the final days to be in a match, and hopefully some of the experience from Nova will come to fruition. So
biggest, and that's great that you're there and just so thrilled about that opportunity. What's the biggest difference between D2 college golf and D1 college golf? Is there a difference? I mean, from not just the coaching, the kids, just the whole picture? Like, what's really just jumped out at you and said, wow, I'm in a different place right now?
Well, I think the main thing is the funding. So at the real big schools, I think they're probably a little bit better funding. I think that's something I could probably say. So definitely the funding, the kind of the resources are a little bit different. The players, I think there's some really good players at all levels. I've always thought this, the years that we've competed in the national championship at the D2 level, I always thought that these kids that were on my team could compete and play highly up in the lineup on some really good D1 schools. But I think the main thing is the depth, and the number one players are probably a little bit stronger across the board. I think that's probably pretty fair to say. I mean, the Maverick McNeelys of the world, the Justin Suzz of the world, the Brandon Woos of the world, those players that, are playing pretty well this year, in Maverick's case, going on and qualifying for the web.com tour in 2018, those players are just, they're a lot of them are more experienced in the junior circuit and have come on to college golf, and they've produced, and because of what they've done in the junior circuit, they probably had a little bit better opportunities at the Division I level. And I think a lot of these D2 players that played probably didn't have as much experience at the junior level, so maybe a little bit late to the party. But I don't think that there's, a ton of talent differential nonetheless in some of these kids, just maybe a little bit more late bloomers. That makes sense.
No, absolutely. What, so you mentioned Maverick McNeely just recently turned pro, has his web.com status. When it's pretty well documented that he was kind of weighing the options that he has, whether it's in the business world, whether he would pursue that and remain amateur or turn professional, which he inevitably did. What is the support process? What is that like for you and for the head coach Conrad Ray? What is the process where you have players that are contemplating turning pro? What kind of support does a college provide?
Well, we just try to ask them questions, honestly. I think the best thing that we can do as a college coach is not to make any assumptions about what a player wants. Just ask very poignant questions about, hey, what are some of the options? Let's put all the options on the table. Let's put all the cards on the table. I think the great thing about Maverick is that he really had a lot of things going for him, and he had a lot of options. And, he could kind of put all the cards on the table and say, hey, what is best for me? What is best for my family? What is best for my future? What do I feel like I want to be spending my career doing? And, I think that's what's great about Maverick is that he honestly, took that decision to heart. And, he realized that it was a big decision and he wasn't going to take it lightly. He was going to spend his time. And, I think the great thing about Maverick is he really enjoyed his experience at Stanford. He was a great teammate. He was a great leader. He worked very, very hard every day. He was very, very disciplined. And, he was just a great college player, and he really enjoyed his experience at Stanford. So he was going to put that first. He was a really, really good team player.
What is a typical week for your team? Let's just assume you're staying home, you're on campus, the kids are in school, you're not traveling to a tournament. Give me an idea what an average week looks like for a golfer, for a player at Stanford.
Absolutely. So we're typically going to practice a couple times a week, so 2-3 times a week, and then we're going to play another 2 to 3 times. If we're in season, we'll work out for 2 times a week. If we're out of season, we might work out 3 times a week. There's obviously different restrictions on the NCAA on hours that we can spend in season, out of season. So in season, we have 20 hours with the team. So we'll typically get right up to that number. On Monday, we might have an off day. Tuesday, we'll have a workout in the morning. Kids will go to class. They normally take classes from, we'll say, 8:30 to 12:30. They'll get a great lunch, head out to the golf course. Very, very interesting and cool thing about Stanford is that the golf course is actually a 5-minute bike ride away from a lot of their classes. So they can go grab a lunch, grab the sandwich, take it to the golf course, eat it there, and then their locker rooms and their clubs are all out there. So they can be in the classroom at 12:30 and be out on the golf course hitting balls at 12:45, 1 o'clock. So it's a pretty cool thing for them. But we'll work out a couple times a week. We'll practice a couple times, and we'll go play. We like to play a lot. I think playing is very important. That's where tournaments are, obviously played are on the golf course. So we try to have a good, healthy balance of playing and practicing. And when we are playing, we're keeping things competitive. A lot of times things kind of, they kind of go around short game. So we'll spend time, with short game on the putting green, TrackMan doing some wedge yardages, some up and down contests, some, seeing how close you can hit different shots, things like that, just to keep them competitive and keep the kids, having a fun time at practice and feeling like they're getting something out of it.
Which two players on your team always seem to be going head to head in practice? Any epic battles that just really stuck out?
I think we have that's the crazy thing about Stanford, and the thing that we really shouldn't take for granted is the fact that we have an incredibly deep team. I really feel like our team from top to bottom can all mix in the lineup. I think this year we played 4 tournaments, and I think we've had 4 separate lineups. So that's one of the things we kind of pride ourselves on, is that everybody really can mix it up with everybody. And every game that we ever put together or contest we put together, no matter how random the teams really are selected, they're always pretty close. And
so your qualifiers are pretty intense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we qualified for every tournament this fall, and they were always down to a shot. Wow. So, it's definitely intense, and guys want to play, and guys want to wear that S on their chest, and they realize how important that is, and realize how, big a moment that is in their college golfing career. So every tournament is very important, because, before you know it, if you don't get in the lineup in the fall, you're like 4 tournaments down, and like you could be missing a qualifier in the spring. And then I think that qualifying and that competition puts them in a better place so that they can go to these tournaments with these elite fields, and play pretty well. And, we have to be able to be able to basically go to these tournaments and, feel like we belong, obviously, and feel like we can compete and go out and win these tournaments, because when it comes down to it in the national championship, you got to be ready to go, and there's nobody that's going to give you anything, and you got to go earn it. And, I think that really, this time of year in December and January is really where you can make some hay. It's just spending some time on your game and kind of taking that next step, and, being able to hit the ground running in February.
Getting back to Stanford. So a couple of questions I got to ask you too about that. Stanford is not only a athletic powerhouse, you are an incredibly competitive and strong academic school. It's kind of the equivalent of Harvard on the West Coast, where
sure,
you have to be able to get the grades just to get into the school. How challenging is that with your recruiting?
I mean, it's definitely challenging. I mean, I think the kids that we're going after are incredibly bright. They definitely are, and they're working their tails off in the classroom as well as on the golf course, and they really have the horsepower to kind of get things done. And I forget what the exact numbers are, but I think right around 45,000 to 50,000 kids basically apply for Stanford every year. And I think last year the admit rate was under kids that basically matriculated were under 2,000. So I think the admit rate is under 5%. I think it was like 4.5%.
Wow.
So just to have that opportunity to be considered for that freshman class is a tremendous honor. And, the kids that we're recruiting, they definitely have to have the horsepower in the classroom to be able to get in, because, we want them to translate into academic success and be able to have the horsepower to obviously get things done on the golf course too as well.
And do you ever have to get kids off the golf course to hit the books, or are they just so self-driven that they got it handled?
Yeah, I think everybody that's at Stanford is pretty motivated, at least academically. That's one of the things that we as coaches at Stanford should never take for granted, is the fact that these kids are extremely motivated academically, and they have some incredible stories. They all have different backgrounds. They have some different likes. We have piano players, chess players. They all have a wide array of different talents. And it's always pretty interesting to kind of get to know these kids and kind of see them grow up, because this is a huge part of their life. This is the part of their life where they're figuring things out. They're trying to figure out, what I want to do for a living? Is golf in my cards? And trying to balance out all those things. That's one of the main reasons why it's been great to work with Conrad, because I think he's seen a lot of players come through during his time.
Sure. Well, it's no secret that there are some incredible golfers that have come through Stanford and made their way to the pro ranks. Nota Begay and Tom Watson, and obviously Tiger Woods. So how much involvement and interaction do these guys that have made it on the PGA Tour, won tournaments, won majors, how much do they come back to Stanford to spend time with the current players?
I think they all do at different times. I mean, I think that's a cool part about our alumni group, is that they're all incredibly invested in the university, and they're definitely guys that have a tremendous amount of pride about Stanford University and their time at Stanford. And even for them to come back, maybe once a year is a huge opportunity for the guys if and when it happens. And I think the coolest part about it is that the guys get to see them, ask questions, kind of talk about some experiences. And, that's just, what other place do you get to really do that with some of the game's elite that have won major championship?
So give me a good example of one of these guys come back. I mean, we're talking about Tiger, we're talking about Noda, who are we talking about, and how does that? I
like the story of Tom Watson, which actually wasn't even back at Stanford, but I believe Maverick told me this, that they're walking up to a tee box, and it's on the Big Island in Hawaii, and when we go to that tournament, basically we get to play this golf course called Nanea in Hawaii, and that's one of the golf courses where Tom Watson hangs out frequent. He's a member, so he comes over and meets the guys, greets the guys, and they're on one of the tee boxes, and I think the guys were kind of tempting him to hit a shot, so he grabs somebody's golf club, obviously not his golf club, and hit just random driver, pops it down the middle about 285, dead straight on a rope. It's incredibly windy, and all the guys are just like in awe. And you could tell the guys didn't really want to say anything. And then it was kind of quiet. and supposedly the rumor has it that Tom Watson basically looks at him and goes, "What the hell do you guys expect? I won 5 British Opens." So I think that's a pretty cool exchange between the guys and one of the famous alumni from our university. But those are the type of things that are just really cool to experience and definitely be a part of.
Very cool. Do you have a Tiger story to share?
The cool story for me, at least, was, we're at the Nike Collegiate Invitational this year, and, they're setting it up as basically you got Conrad Ray, who's former player at Stanford University, I think 94 to 97. You got Casey Martin, who was on Conrad's team. You got Nota Begay, who was also on that team, and then you got Tiger Woods. So we're at the Nike Collegiate Invitational, which Nike puts on, and there's kind of like a discussion and kind of back and forth. They're talking about some old college stories from, their legendary golf coach, Wally Goodwin. And it's Nota Begay up there, it's Casey Martin up there, and it's and Conrad. And I believe this guy named Cricket was kind of moderating the discussion. And they're talking about, Wally Goodwin and their experiences at Stanford and all that stuff. And then Noda comes up and he's basically like, "So do you guys think Tiger Woods is going to come back?" And they're all like talking, and Noda's like, "Hey, what do you guys think?" up there in the crowd. So it's a crowd full of collegiate golfers, all Nike schools across the country. And Noda gets on the mic. He's like, "Why don't we just call him?" So he puts Nota Begay, he calls Tiger Woods, and he puts his phone up to the microphone. He's like, "Hey, Tiger, I'm just standing," or actually Tiger first answers the call, and he's like, "What do you want?" And so
that's awesome, because that's exactly how if I had to guess how Tiger Woods would answer the phone when Nota Begay calls, that's exactly how I would imagine that would go.
Yeah, so that's exactly how it went. And Nota Begay is like, "So we're here at the Nike Collegiate Invitational. We're here with some great college golfers, and we just wanted to know, do you think that you'll be coming back?" And then right when he said the last thing, coming back, you look up to the back of the crowd, and Tiger Woods walks right into the room, and he sits down. And then it's basically an hour of them going back and forth, kind of reliving some college moments. I think the cool my cool story was just is just hearing them kind of talk about their coach, and they all like had some incredible stories about their coach during the time. And Wally Goodwin, a legendary guy. Obviously Coach Tiger and some great players. It was just a great experience for him to come and see the guys. And I guess he came over from the President's Cup the night before. So the President's Cup team had just beat the international squad, and him and Noda flew over from, where was it? New Jersey.
Yeah.
Got into Nike, came to this event, and Noda knew the whole time, but Conrad and Casey Martin had no idea that Tiger Woods was coming. So it was just kind of a really,
Tiger's a prankster.
Yeah, total prankster, but it was probably one of the coolest experiences of my life. And I just remember seeing some of the faces on, some of the guys that, obviously looked up and idolized this guy. And for him to take the time and come to talk to us was pretty cool.
Absolutely.
And now, time for a quick bucket.
So we have a segment here on the Back of the Range Golf podcast called The Quick Bucket. I am going to ask you a couple random questions, and let me know if you can provide an answer to these. And I'm going to need you to try and be a little impartial here. This is going to be a tough one.
Okay.
Jack Nicklaus, his victory at the Masters in 1986 at the age of 46, or the 5th green jacket of Tiger Woods, which would be the most substantial victory in your opinion?
So the 5th green jacket has Tiger Woods has won 4 green jackets so far?
So Tiger has won 4. So how do you not know how many Masters Tiger has?
I'm pretty sure it was 4. I just wanted to make sure that I'm right before I answer the question. But 100% I would go with the Tiger Woods victory. I think that would be huge for the game. And obviously, taking into account some of the things that he's gone through, I think that it would be a huge monumental victory.
Yep.
There's no denying that.
Yep. No, I'm on both sides. I'm impartial here as the host of the podcast. I've heard different answers for that same question, but it's always fascinating. And
if you grew up in the Tiger era, you're probably more apt to pick Tiger. And if you're a little older and you might have, watched Jack Nicklaus win that victory and you were a big, golf fan during those times, you'd probably be a little bit partial to Jack Nicklaus's victory. So I think that would probably be a question where I would say would sway towards, age specific.
Very true. Very true. The second one I want to give you is you can give a major championship to anyone in history, male, female, alive or dead. They could have no majors or they could have 18 majors. Who are you giving a major to?
Myself.
Okay. All right. We're not gonna edit that out just since I have that on file. But let me clarify one more time. Has to be someone legitimate. Not saying you're not, but let's kind of keep things in perspective here. Okay. There is no Santa Claus. Oh shit. I do have to edit out. Okay. Can't give one to yourself. I should have put that in there. Who would you like to give a major to? It's a spirit. It's the season of giving.
The season of giving. I'll say this. I was a big Ted Treba. Probably nobody on here knows.
Holy
Ted
shit, Ted Treba.
I was a big Ted Treba fan growing up. So if I could give a major to anybody, it would be I always enjoyed watching him, and he probably didn't really even know I was watching him, but I was a big Ted Treba fan because we had the same coach growing up, and I would give one to him because I always remember turning on that that ticker as a kid and seeing those scores scroll across the bottom before internet was really big, and waiting to see kind of how he was progressing through the weekend. And so I would probably give the major to him because but I would what do you call it, retroact it back to when I was
back to yourself. Back to yourself.
Yeah, back to my high school self when I was watching a lot more professional golf.
Man, I really hope Ted Treba listens to this episode because he is that'll be great.
He's gonna be happy about that.
He's gonna be thrilled. Wow. Of course, it's the second choice though after yourself. So
yeah.
Wow. Well, Ryan, I really appreciate the time here at the Back of the Range. We will definitely keep track of Stanford throughout the year. Hope they make it to the national championship, and best of luck to you in the future.
Yes, awesome. Thanks for having me, and wish you an incredible amount of success with the show.
And there you have it. Special thanks to Ryan Jamison, assistant coach of the Stanford Cardinal. And if you're scoring at home, that's 6 episodes, and in 2 of them, there's been a mention of Ted Treba. So, didn't see that coming, but Ted, if you're listening, you're welcome to come on the show whenever you want. So we will see everyone next week. Don't forget, follow us on Instagram. And if you like this podcast and you have friends that might enjoy it also, please share it and leave a review. All right, we will see you next week at the back of the range.